Good morning, everybody. I'm Diane Owens, as Randa said, the California State President, and I am so happy to welcome all of you here today. We have a nice group of people that have come for our second AUW Fund event. There's no lunch, of course, like we used to do, but the great thing about this is that almost all of our fellows can come and speak to you, and so that's very, very important. I am so proud of all of the AUW members because of your support of AUW Fund. You've supported AUW Fund through the years. Some of you who are newer members, maybe not as long, but some members have supported AUW Fund for years and years, even when it was called the Educational Foundation Programs. In California, we have established 154 research and project endowments, 23 international fellowship endowments, and 68 American fellowship endowments. We have raised a lot of money and put it into endowments that will go on for perpetuity to fund scholars every year to advance this world. We have 37 fellows and grant recipients in California this year, and we're so proud of them, and we're going to hear from almost every one of them. We have a couple that have had some emergencies, so they aren't able to be with us for these 3 sessions, but they, almost all of them are here. We even have one from Poland that you will meet very soon, who is going into the evening in Poland, and she's here to speak with us this morning. So we raised over $518,000 last year. And our new AUW Fund Chair, Lynn Batchelor, who's also our Secretary of the Board, has raised the limit a little bit to $555,000 this year. She figured if you could raise $518,000 last year during COVID, I'll bet you can reach $555,000 this year. We have some special guests with us today that I know I can't introduce them because it's a webinar, but we want to be sure that everyone knows that they have joined us today. We have one national president who has also been a state president, and that is Sharon Schuster. And you will meet her shortly, but you will meet her at the end of the program to talk about the Monine Lecce Giving Circle. So we're really happy that she can join us for all 3 of these affairs. We also have former presidents Donna Lilly, Kathleen Doty, Joanne Brown, and Jane Niemeyer with us today. So welcome and thank you for coming to be with us. We also have a special guest from AUW National. Every year we ask someone who is associated with the fellowships program to come and talk to us about what's happening at National. Because I think it's very important, because they're the ones that decide who the fellows and grant recipients will be. They decide what school, or they don't decide which schools, but they decide everything about these young women that we're going to meet today. But the woman that we're going to meet today is Heather Miller, and she is the Director of Advancement at AUW National. She has been with AUW for about 4 years now, and she used to come to California when we had luncheons. She came and was very instrumental in all of those luncheons, both North and South. She, in her role, she engages with many of AUW's most dedicated members and friends who want to make a meaningful impact through philanthropy. She's originally from Charlottesville, Virginia, and she began her career in fundraising development at the University of Virginia in the College of Arts and Sciences. And she's worked in nonprofit fundraising for the past 16 years, having relocated to Washington, D.C. in 2005. Prior to joining AUW, I thought this was very interesting. Heather worked for nearly 12 years at the American Farmland Trust, a national nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting sound farming practices and keeping farmers on the land. It was through their Women for the Land initiative that Heather began to help to raise awareness about gender disparities that hold women back. In her free time, which she doesn't have much of, Heather enjoys reading, hiking, and spending time outside in nature. She has an adult son, Sean, who lives in New York, and a stepdaughter, Daisy, who lives in Maryland. So let's give Heather a warm California welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Diane. Hi, I'm delighted to be with all of you today. And yes, I do wish that we were together in person as we were in recent years. But it's great to see a lot of familiar names on the call. This is a wonderful event, and I just want to thank all AAUW members for joining us today for such a great event. And thank you to the organizers of this. I know a lot goes into this. I'm really honored to join you for this special day and celebrate our inspiring AAUW fellowship and grant recipients. It's a real treat to be with you and hear from our impressive fellows and grantees. They are powerful women, and we should all be proud to recognize their wonderful accomplishments today. As Diane mentioned, I am AAUW National's Director of Advancement, and in that capacity, I work with individual donors who are making a real impact through philanthropy. I'm so impressed with all that our affiliates, branches, and states around the country are doing, and especially AAUW California. Some of you may know that 2021 marks the 140th anniversary of AAUW, and we are delighted to be convening all of you next month to celebrate our rich history. In the coming weeks, the National Office will be sharing with you some of the ways we're celebrating, including a 140th anniversary commemorative webpage and video, a series of educational webinars, and finally, on November 17th at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific, we will be holding a 140th anniversary virtual celebration, where we will also be unveiling and recognizing this year's Distinguished Alumna Recognition Award recipient. The recipient of this special award is still a secret. I don't know myself yet who was selected, but I'm told that this person is very well known, is of international prominence. And so we look forward to making the announcement and introducing you to our awardee with a special presentation on November 17th. Please do save the date, and the formal invitation and Zoom registration link will be coming to you all very soon via email. Now, a little refresher on AAUW history. As many of you know, in 1888, AAUW's founder, Marion Talbot, made the call to create a fund to support graduate women. And as a result, the very first fellowship was awarded to Ida Street in the amount of $350. Both Marion and AAUW's fellowship chairman, Christine Ladd Franklin, asked all AAUW members to contribute $1, which at that time was actually quite significant. This story from over 100 years ago really resonates even today, in that philanthropy is one of the most powerful tools we have to support women who are making history today and well into the future. This year, we ask each of you to consider making a contribution in honor of our 140th anniversary through our end of year giving campaign. The gift to the AAUW Fund, or as we call it now, AAUW's Greatest Needs Fund, is an investment in our future for the next 140 years. Our traditions and history should always be honored and celebrated, but we know the world is also changing rapidly, and we must be equipped to respond and develop new and innovative ways to accomplish our mission. AAUW's strategic plan, adopted by the National Board in 2018, is the bold and dynamic roadmap guiding us on our journey to real impact for women and girls. We're excited that AAUW is standing on solid ground because of your continued generosity, and we're very excited to announce that this year's end of year giving campaign will once again offer a historic matching gift opportunity. Our national board, committee leaders, and staff, including myself and our new CEO, Gloria Blackwell, have all contributed to the matching pool fund of over $69,000 now. It is a record high. This is the pool of funds that we will use to match all members' gifts through the end of the year. You'll be able to see the names of all our matching gift supporters very soon on the 140th anniversary website, which is also launching in early November. We are celebrating many of AAUW's achievements at that event on November 17th in our strategic plan areas, which are education and training, economic security for women, and advancing women in leadership. And just a few of the many accomplishments in the last 2 to 3 years for our strategic plan. We've trained over 175,000 participants in negotiation skills, and we've engaged over 300 historically Black colleges and universities, women's colleges, and minority serving institutions in our work, thanks to our supporters and partners. And AAUW has helped to enact pay equity laws in 16 states. These new laws cover millions of Americans and lay the groundwork for innovation that can be replicated at the federal level. And we piloted the Equity Network just as the nation went into lockdown due to the pandemic. And through the Equity Network, we've been engaging virtually with hundreds of working people, ages 21 to 40 on a weekly basis about over gender equity, advocacy, voting rights, and professional career development. And finally, to ensure AAUW's sustainability and commitment to mission, we fiscally aligned our budget and staffing to meet the needs of today and tomorrow. And we've launched a state-of-the-art new website. We hope you will join us during the celebration for this 140th anniversary year to support the Greatest Needs AAUW Fund in honor of and in support of our next 140 years as well. Thank you all once again for your support, and congratulations to the fellows and grantees we will be hearing from today. Back to you, Diane.
Thank you, Heather. We're so glad that you could come with us today. And I know you might not be able to stay on the whole time, but please feel free to stay and hear these wonderful women talk. It's really, really going to be a great, great morning. So here's how it's going to go from here on. I am going to introduce the first 5 fellows grant recipients, and then Lynn Batchelor will introduce the remaining list. Each of our fellows and grant recipients will have 5 to 7 minutes to speak. Most of them have slides, but not all of them. But you'll be so proud to be AUW members once you hear these young women speak. And first of all, our first speaker is coming to us from Poland, as I mentioned before. So straight from Poland, we have Sophia Waldor, and she is going to be speaking to us. She's coming back to Davis. She's actually studying at Davis, UC Davis, and she's coming back next month, I think. But she is, her discipline is sociology, and she's getting her PhD in migration, gender, and human rights. And through this work, she's going to be working in the public sector and other sectors in Poland, studying different feminist organizations. She's being helped with the endowment. She's being helped by the Anna Softlet Townsend Endowment, the Fresno, California branch, and Palos Verdes branch, and Ada Buckingham Endowment, and the Joan Zender Endowment. So take it away from Poland, Sophia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. As Diane mentioned, my areas of interest are migration, gender, and human rights. And I will start by talking briefly about my project. And in the end, I wanted to very shortly address a situation that is happening right now in Poland, very much on the topic of migration and human rights situation. So my specific, more specific topic of my research is female Chechen refugees fleeing domestic violence and political persecution. And in my project, I'm challenging theories of integration, decision-making, and transnationalism. The main questions I'm asking myself are: how do survivors of domestic violence and political persecution make the decision to leave the country? How are those two groups intertwined, and what is the role of social networks and in perpetuation of domestic violence, triggered migration, and political refuge? Could I have the next slide? So the main methods of data gathering that I used were participant observation, in-depth interviews with professionals, and biographical or narrative interviews with female Chechen refugees. In total, I interviewed 35 women. Next slide, please. So I chose Chechnya as the country of the origin of my interviewees. Chechnya is the little red dot on the bottom of the map, just a small socio-political context for my study. There were two Chechen wars with Russia, one in late 90s and one in early 2000s. In 2003, Chechnya became part of the Russian Federation, and the government was taken over by pro-Russian President Ahmad Kadyrov, and then by Ramzan Kadyrov, who rules to this day. And even though right now Chechnya is not officially in the state of political conflict, Chechens are still fleeing as refugees because of very severe political persecution. It is estimated that around 25% of the Chechen population has left their homeland. Next slide. So one of my main conclusion, specifically of the first part of my research, is that political conflict can be both a source of and an escape from domestic violence. Some of my interviewees described to me how their husbands became more violent as a result of torture they experienced in war. Additionally, police officers did not react after women reported the abuse because they didn't want to interfere in family issues, but also because of the ongoing conflict, they had more important problems to worry about. Although there are no official statistics, various sources like local NGOs indicate that bride kidnapping and child marriages have been on the rise since the conflict between Russia and Chechnya began. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, not all women who experience domestic violence can be subject to international refugee protection because gender, unlike other aspects of difference, including race, religion, and nationality, is not listed as one of the convention grounds that can form the basis of a claim for protection under international law. And after recent political shifts in some part of the world, also in Poland, it became harder for domestic violence victims to be granted asylum. One of my interviewees, a human rights lawyer, quoted a migration official that denied asylum to domestic abuse victim, arguing that in Poland, husbands also beat their wives, therefore that's like a worldwide problem. At the same time, my interviewees' biographies showed that political conflict can open the door to escape for some domestic violence survivors. Are some quotes. I'm going to explain a little bit more how it can happen. So some women admitted that their husbands' arrests made it easier to organize the escape and leave. Also, often family members were against their daughter or sister leaving the abusive husband because they believed that it would bring shame on the whole family. So using the argument of suffering political persecution to convince their family was a strategy some of my interviewees used. Similarly, fleeing political persecution constituted a more convincing case to migration officials than escaping domestic violence. And here, the first quote talks about this specific situation where political persecution convinced migration official to let Karina in. The names are changed, of course. And then the second quote talks about how social networks and institutions that were established because of the political conflict helped women to get their passport, in this case, to be able to leave. So right now, I would really briefly want to address the situation right now in Poland. I wanted to use this occasion because I believe it's really important to spread the information. I just came back yesterday from the Polish-Belarusian border, where migrants are dying in the forested border between Poland and Belarus. Polish authorities accuse Belarus of deliberately abandoning thousands of refugees and migrants near its border in an attempt to destabilize the EU. Poland has responded by declaring an emergency zone forbidden to journalists and activists and basically civilians. At the same time, Polish border officials are illegally forcing people seeking asylum back over the border to Belarus instead of processing applications. In result, refugees are trapped in the forest, hiding and trying not to get caught and be sent back to Belarus, where they are beaten up and threatened by armed soldiers. And temperatures are dropping, and already a few people were found dead, but it is believed that there are many more, just they haven't been found yet. Just yesterday, as I said, I came back from the border where I volunteered with one of the NGOs that try to help by providing food and warm clothes to those in need. But unfortunately, because of the law, we cannot do much more. We can't even provide shelter to those people, because that could be treated as, could be used as we could be accused of human trafficking. So it is no doubt that we are facing a humanitarian crisis right now at the border, and that this crisis will only grow as temperatures will continue to drop in winter. So I just wanted to address this situation. It's not very it's not directly related to my topic, but I wanted to use this opportunity to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. We wish you the best, and we wish everyone that you're talking to the best. And we'll welcome you back to California very soon. And please stay in touch with us.
Okay.
Okay, our next speaker is Sabrina Baffert. And Sabrina has a career development grant, and she's studying at the University of California in Berkeley. And her discipline is biology. And she's going to get a master's in public health in epidemiology. I can't speak this morning, can I? Anyway, she is a project manager and at a biochemical company in San Diego. And her work is going to focus on more efficient RNA polymers in manufacturing vaccines. And we're certainly hearing a lot about vaccines now, and you're certainly in the right field, Sabrina. Sabrina is studying under the research and projects grants. And so she has about 20 grants that are funding her studies this year. And I'm only going to read about 5 of them and hoping you'll go to the AUW website to find out if the endowment that belongs to your branch is one of them that I did not name, but I don't want to take too much time or she won't have any time to speak. So she is studying under the Arcata, California branch, Alhambra, San Gabriel branch, Laguna Beach branch, San Mateo branch, and the Alicia Hetman R&P grant, who's one of our former state presidents. So you'll have to look and see who the others are, and welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you for the introduction, Diane. Are you able to see me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning and hello, everyone. I'd like to thank the AAUW for inviting me to speak to you all today and for all of the contribution to my efforts in pursuing a career in public health. My name is Sabrina Baffert, and as Diane mentioned, I am a research scientist at a local biotech startup called Primordial Genetics. And I'm also an MPH student at UC Berkeley studying epidemiology. Next slide, please. My interests lie in public health and infectious disease research, and through my work at Primordial Genetics, I am contributing to the development of RNA-based therapeutics that have seen a growing demand since the successful launch of the COVID-19 vaccines. The development of RNA technology has potential therapeutic applications for both chronic and acute human diseases. Current manufacturing of mRNAs for clinical purposes need to meet precise key performance indicators, including purity, uniformity, fidelity, and absence of components that may cause adverse innate immune responses in the human body. Our program at Primordial Genetics focuses on discovery and evolution of polymerases that outperform current industrial standards. The proprietary molecular evolution tools that we employ result in improved enzymes that are licensed or sold to companies developing and manufacturing mRNA vaccines and therapeutics. The pandemic has shown that there has never been a more critical time for emphasizing the importance of scientific research and communicating how disease impacts communities differently across all demographics. This is the impetus that really fueled my commitment to further my education in infectious disease research. Next slide, please. I enrolled at UC Berkeley in January of this year with the goal of pursuing my master's in public health. I fundamentally wanted to look at a different angle of health, zooming out of pipetting at the lab bench and looking broadly at how what I am helping to create really impacts the population as a whole and how it affects those populations differently. Currently, I'm learning about the principles and methods of epidemiology, and this includes the descriptive and analytic approaches to assessing the distributions of health, disease, and injury in populations, and considering factors that influence across those distributions. I'm also learning how to calculate and interpret measures of disease frequency and how to select appropriate epidemiologic study designs for a given research question and context. Different study designs have inherent strengths and weaknesses, and I'm learning to explore the potential bias and threats to validity that may occur, as well as be able to interpret the study's findings to form further hypotheses and to assess public value. All of this is to gain a more thorough understanding of how current public health programs work, why they are designed in such a way, and to think of different ways to improve them. The vaccine rollout was a prime example of just that. Next slide, please. Public health is a multifaceted field, where there are many opportunities to improve health outcomes on various scales. Analyzing data to find patterns of new cases of diseases, to measure intervention adherence, or for mapping disease distributions are all critical mathematical and experimental tools for investigating solutions for public health outcomes. But we must remember that the public is made up of people like us. So it's crucial to consider the human element of this effort. And we can do that by thinking about what changes or programs to positively impact health outcomes, how will they actually work, and where is it best to implement them so they are long lasting? Structural and institutional environments are often the places where large impacts can make the most change. Community partnership in public health actions is a key element in improvement of health outcomes at a local level. And I'm also learning about the importance of socially constructed concepts of race, ethnicity, immigration, gender, and social class, and how those factors influence health and structure health inequities. It is important to study these relationships between human behavior and public health to critically assess the models of behavior and to explore strength-based multi-level intervention design. These learnings, along with my ongoing research, are the stepping stones into my future as an epidemiologist focused on tackling global health inequities in underserved populations. Final slide, please. Thank you again for the AAUW and the Career Development Grant to help fund my continued education in epidemiology at UC Berkeley. And thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Sabrina. Thank you for undertaking what you're doing right now. It's very, very important for our world, as you well know. And our next American fellow is Gillian Bogart, and she's getting her PhD at the University of California in Santa Cruz. And her discipline is anthropology and archaeology. And she is an archaeologist, an anthropologist whose work explores social and ecological transformation, especially in relation to capital-driven disturbance. So very interesting study. So she's being funded by 3 American fellowships. One, Sharon Schuster, Dorothy Fox, Monine and Joseph Lecce, and Judy Horan. So welcome, Gillian.
Hi, can you see me all right? I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'll get started then. So first, I want to thank you for the opportunity to meet and speak with you all today. I'm honored to be an American Fellow this year and to become part of this community of the American Association for University Women. I'm zooming to you from Santa Cruz, California, and I'll begin with a land acknowledgement. The land on which I am calling you from is the unceded territory of the Awaswas-speaking Nupi tribe. The Amamutsin tribal band, comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to missions at Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. So I will start now by introducing myself, and then I'll tell you a little bit about my scholarship. I am a doctoral candidate in the Cultural Anthropology program at the University of California, Santa Cruz. You'll see on my slide there our most charismatic mascot, the banana slug. At UC Santa Cruz, I'm also affiliated with the Center for Southeast Asian Coastal Interactions. It's a research center, but it's really so much more. It's a community where scholars gather across disciplines, across national bounds to exchange ideas, and it's really informed my thinking in a lot of ways, so I wanted to mention it. And I also wanted to say that I'm a founding member of UC Santa Cruz's student parent organization. That's our logo there with the banana slug kiddos. And I'm happy to report that just last week we learned that our advocacy efforts alongside other campus and labor organizations have led to our on-campus childcare staying open, and it had been under threat of closure. So that's a win for us. And I mention this because I think it might be something that the membership would appreciate. So can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so let me tell you a bit about my work. My research explores social and ecological transformation. I'm thinking about this in relation to capital-driven disturbance. So these connections between the state and capital and how they sort of infiltrate all of these different spaces in the Indonesian nation state. And I'm interested in how these relationships are forged through and across difference in everyday life. This is something I really love about being an anthropologist, because through quotidian objects like salt, for example, or through mundane interactions, it might be just something as basic as everyday as a market exchange, we find a lens into some of society's most complex phenomena and social dynamics. Next slide, please. So currently I am preparing a dissertation. It's based on over 2 years of ethnographic research at sites across Indonesia, and situated primarily in coastal fisher farmer communities. So this image is of a woman who has just been harvesting salt in a coastal community in West Timor. I study the commercialization of salt production on the island of Timor, which is one of the nation's outer islands. Under pressures from the Indonesian state to produce commercial grade salt, and in the context of declining ocean fish populations, salt farming has come to predominate livelihood aspirations of coastal residents. This is even as they recognize that it catalyzes ecological effects that contribute to the denigration of lifeways in the region. My study explores the world-making processes of salt production, as well as what is lost in these processes. By analyzing production processes for different kinds of salt, I attend to the ways that fisher farmers in Timor negotiate their position in relation to multiple competing value regimes. My research shows that none of these salt production processes is purely capitalist. So instead, I'm insisting that there's porous edges to these commercial relations, and that they bring different value forms to rub up against one another and sort of commingle and contaminate and bleed into one another. My writing delves into the conundrums of property and asks how dynamics of gender and regional ethnic background figure into different processes of value making. Each of the kinds of salt I study is linked with specific forms of landed property. And this point is well exemplified by my analysis of the use of plastic geomembranes by smallholders. So smallholders are people who the land that they're using is less than 20 hectares. The use of plastic geomembranes by smallholders to speed up the crystallization process is one of the things that I study. And I found that the materiality of production processes is linked with the ways that labor and landscapes are disciplined. And I also found that the adoption of these technologies, right, like the geotextiles used in salt production, is facilitated by the residual presence of colonial and physical infrastructures. I'm working with capacious notions of politics and economy in order to hold open for analysis what I think is a really productive landscape where secular and non-secular worlds are overlapping. So when I think about politics for me includes fisher farmers forging alliances with ancestral crocodiles so that they can fight back against corporate land grabs. Economy includes all sorts of exchanges, right? Not just ones that involve money, but it might include a woman selling salt who is far from home, exchanging dried fish in order so that she can have some shelter for the night. And this might be something that sets in motion a long-term relationship of ongoing exchange that over time builds a relation between people and place, which is another theme sort of that runs through the dissertation. Can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so finally, I'll add that part of my continuing research has been a burgeoning collaboration with the community where I conducted my doctoral research. It's so you'll see in the photo there, this is a woman gleaning shellfish from the mudflat, and it was taken by one of my collaborators, Rika. So on the, I'm not sure if it's the right or left for you, but you'll see all these really small shellfish that are kind of clustered around a tiny growing mangrove tree. And then the women in the picture, they're digging their hands into the mud, and that's how they pull out these shellfish. And this is actually a really important subsistence food. So aside from thinking about these salt production modes that go into capitalist commodity chains, I'm also thinking with these women about the way that they're building livelihoods in these sort of these commons areas. And I'll just end by saying that it's been a joy to continue working with women from the coastal village that I did my dissertation research in, and documenting their livelihood practices, the environmental changes that they're perceiving in their hometown as it transitions from a fishing village to a site of commercial salt production. I've already learned so much from them, and I'm really excited about centering their voices in discussions of social and environmental change. And last, I'll thank you all. I want to stop there to respect everyone's time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the opportunity to become an American Fellow. My best wishes to you all, and please ping me if you have questions. This is it's a short presentation time, so if you have questions, please just ping me. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you. Very important and interesting work. So thanks for sharing that with us. And thank you for your activist work keeping childcare open. That's great. We appreciate that. So we're going to move on now to another American Fellow. And her name is Stacy Sabai, which rhymes with rabbi, she told me. And so that's how I could remember how to pronounce her name. She, as I said, is an American Fellow, and she's at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. And her discipline is theater. And she is going to talk to us about the sound of touch. So it should be very interesting. She's studying under the Gladys Murphy Graham and the Vivian Lament endowments. So take it away, Stacy.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you all for your presence this morning. As Diane mentioned, my name is Stacy Sabai. I'm an assistant professor of theater pedagogy at Loyola Marymount University. And my project is called The Sound of Touch. I've been thinking a lot lately about the role of the artist in these times. And I came across a definition that was, artists are cultural first responders, which I thought was juicy. So in this first slide, you'll see two artistic responses to living in the 2020s. The first is this visual image, which is dynamic and compelling to me in the longing and also how our sense of proximity through social distancing has evolved. And the second piece is what's become an anthem for me in the pandemic, called the Keep Going song by the Bangsons. So as we move through this presentation, I hope you will consider what role art is playing in your life through this very weird time, and also to check out the work of these wonderful women. This illustration is by Emma Lynch, and the Keep Going song features Abigail Bangson. It's pretty incredible. So next slide, please. In the next 5-ish minutes, I want to share what I would always tell my students to do in a presentation: who you are, what you're doing, how you do it, and what it means. So you'll see 4 slides that review my identities and their intersections, what I'm curious about, how I explore it in this project, and maybe what it means for all of us. So let's move to the next slide, please. Identities. So Stacy Sabai is my name. I use she, her pronouns. I was grateful to Gillian for the land acknowledgement, and wanted to center that I grew up for the first 18 years of my life on the land of the Métis Treaty 6 territory, which is now known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And I currently live on the land of the Tongva, where I am an uninvited guest at Loyola Marymount University, and I am grateful to work on these lands. I have continuing questions about citizenry and borders and the role that they play in our lives. Thank you, Sophia, and my life personally. Next week, I will take my citizenship exam, a test in the States, and wondering about my relationship to home and what that means in my life. How do I find home as a citizen, and how do I respond to that place through my work? So my media for these explorations is theater. I trained as a theater artist, and now I train actors as well as graduate students who are becoming performance pedagogues. I guess, as I like to say, to simplify it for people who are non-theater pedagogues, if you know the Magic School Bus, I'm essentially an aspiring Miss Frizzle. Finally, I was grateful to Gillian for positioning her humanity as a part of her introduction. And I wanted to note that I am a bonus mom to a fantastic human being who has some special needs. And it has been my joy and my love to participate in the world in a new way as activist for his well-being and needs. So I dedicate this session to him. He's going into surgery next week, and part of being a woman is being sometimes a caregiver and a carebringer. So I bring him some love and care and dedicate this session to him, and maybe if you have a little light in your heart to beam Landon's way. Thank you. Next slide, please. I neglected to say that's expansion by Paige Bradley on the last slide. And here we have a stock photo from Prezi, which I love because I love seeing light bulbs go off in the classroom. So what am I curious about? I was curious about the old Beach Boys song, I Just Wasn't Made for These Times. Like, what? It's so hard to be a human, it feels like, in this decade. And how can I grow with and from and through all of the feels and all of this? I noticed that I was changing in many ways through my senses as a feeling person, as a sensing person in my Myers-Briggs. How I'm experiencing the world has changed. The currency of touch, both through the longing for intimacy, touch, hugs, but also the polarity, which is this need to retreat and withdraw and have social distance, and the uncertainty and tension between those two things. Thank you. Finally, technology-mediated presence. Like most educators and students on this call, we've spent much of our lives on Zoom over the last 2 years or some equivalent. And that means that no longer am I in a state of live presence in classroom, in theater, in community in the same way. It becomes a virtual or technology-mediated presence, which informs how I research. Next slide, please. So I have an amazing graduate research assistant. Her name is Christine Bryhan, and she's graduating from LMU's Performance Pedagogy program this year. Christine has a condition called synesthesia, and it's hard to say, but the definition is actually pretty simple if we slow it down. So I'll read it for us. A hereditary condition in which a triggering stimulus evokes the automatic, involuntary, affect-laden, and conscious perception of a sensory or conceptual property that differs from that of the trigger. Thank you, Dr. Seidowik. A much simpler way is to look at this image below, which is a piece of synesthetic visual art by Christina Eve, that is a visual representation of sound stimulus to her brain, meaning that she heard a piece of music, and this is how her brain experienced it, perceived it, and expressed it. There are many kinds of synesthesia. I thought this one was really beautiful, and I love learning from Christine about her experience of the world. Next slide, please. So when the algorithm found me on social media, it brought a new piece of technology that it wanted me to shop now for, called Playtronica. Playtronica is a German design and innovation company that has become incredibly popular in art, design, and new media. They focus on intentional technological synesthesia, meaning folks who weren't born with synesthesia, like me, can experience intentionally through their technology what it would be like to transfer one sensory impulse into another sense. So the image below is of Playtronica's smart textiles, known as the Playtron and the Touch Me. These smart textiles convert a touch impulse into music. So through a theater and theater education laboratory, I'm exploring what the potential is for this technology to help us understand, express, and artistically share our experience of being human in the 2020s. Next slide, please. So what does all that mean? Carrie Fisher said, as reported through Meryl Streep, to take your broken heart and make it into art. So in order to discover some answers about what it feels like to be you or us in the 2020s, my collaborators and I are investigating, documenting, and describing, 1, training exercises for theater education, and 2, devising practices for immersive theater, which means where the audience is involved in the making of it in some way, that use current technologies, like Playtronica smart textiles, to become more attuned to our sensory of the experiences of the world and how that's changing. Next slide, please. Or really simply, to know ourselves and our world more deeply through technology-enhanced storytelling. Next slide, please. I found this image and it really struck me. It's a Prezi stock photo, and its description was that the actor's job is to hold their heart up to the light. And so in all of my work, that's what I'm trying to do, is find a way to share the inside of me with the outside world so that perhaps it resonates with somebody else's insides, and they too can have a sense of belonging to something shared. So in this time of interbeing, interdependence, I am so grateful for your kind attention. May you be safe, happy, well, and free.
Thank you so much, Stacy, for sharing with us this morning. That was really wonderful. Thank you very, very much. I think you've learned to use Zoom and teaching very well, very well. So good luck to you. And now we're going to move on to another American fellowship. And this is Jasmine Dollywall. And she is investigating the role of the supernova explosion in the formation of the solar system. She's studying at the University of California in Santa Cruz also. And her discipline is Earth, Atmospheric, and Marine Sciences. And she's getting a postdoctoral in planetary science. She is going to take us into the unknown, I think, right? So she's studying under the San Jose branch, Winford W. Brown Endowment, the Fresno, California branch endowment, and the San Jose branch Centennial Endowment. So welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I think you can see me.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm at UC Santa Cruz, which is on the land, which is on the unceded territory, as was speaking Yupi tribe of the Amamutsan tribal band. And next slide, please. And I want to thank you for this fellowship because it has allowed me to come up with a new way of looking at something that my advisor does and has given me the means to do so. So thank you so much. And so it's about formation of the solar system. And the formation of the solar system starts with the solar nebula, which is gas and dust. This is on the far left. And there's just a bunch of gas and dust that just kind of is hanging out. And then something which is mostly just, it basically starts rotating. And then this is the beginning of the sun, which is the middle of solar systems, as there are many other solar systems beyond our own. And then as things start swirling around, they start coming together. And this is early condensation. And so we get smaller things becoming larger. And then the next step is planetary accretion. So accrete means to come together. And so in the planetary accretion, these smaller objects become larger and larger by colliding with one another. And these collisions can be quite violent because the early solar system, but also there's different models. There's pebble accretion, where tiny little pebbles come together and melt to form a massive body like the Earth. So we mostly understand how these things happen, and it's not just from meteorites, which is what I study, but also from astronomy. Excuse me. Astronomy. I'm going to take a drink of something. Okay. Astronomy and astrophysics, and the dynamics of the solar system. And so, next slide, please. And so the first part where we have this, 1 second, sorry. I got too excited. So the stellar nursery. So when we have the solar nebula come together and start forming the solar system as we know it, this disk, that was on the previous slide, before that all happens, everything's in a stellar nursery. So stars are born in a nursery, but they also die very close to the nursery. So we are a fifth-ish generation solar system. To put that in context, the Big Bang happened like 14 billion years ago. And that is when the universe apparently began. And we, as a solar system, are about 4.5-ish, 4.7 billion years old. So there's 10 billion years between the start of the universe and the formation of our solar system. So many stars had to form, grow, have solar systems, and then die for us to have the elements that have made our solar system what it is. And so one of the main indicators of this is that from astronomical observations, we know that supernova, and then from remote sensing of elements, and from many complicated chemical physics, we know that supernova create iron and heavier elements. So all the elements less heavy than iron can essentially be made in stars. Our star is very young comparatively. It makes hydrogen into helium, and then it can go on and make oxygen, carbon, and so on and so forth. But iron and heavier comes from supernova. So we are not only made of stars, we're made of stars that have had a full life cycle and exploded and given us their elements. And so that is kind of the motivation for this work, because we want to understand what was the local environment when our solar system was forming. What were the things that were close by? And by things close by, I mean, stellar inputs. Were there supernova? Were there, large giants that were giving us heavy winds with something else in them? So what was the local environment that made our chemistry and our solar system? And then ultimately our planet, and the fact that we have life on our planet, which you can't have life without many of these heavier elements. So next slide, please. And so in the young solar system, we have primitive meteorites, and they're called chondrites. That's the jargon. And they formed in this early condensation. So on the first slide, I had the solar system, and then early condensation, then planetary accretion. So these are forming very early. And the canonical idea is that some little particles came together, and then they just kind of glommed onto each other in a rather peaceful manner. And if you look at the picture on the bottom here, you see that you can see circles and like weird little grains inside something that can essentially be called like a matrix. Like if you put a bunch of clay and you put like some tiny dots in there, maybe this is just everything that glommed together in the early solar system. We are learning that this picture is much more complex than we have understood in the past. But I'm bringing these up because traditionally this research on understanding the early solar system's environment via meteorites has focused on the primitive meteorites, the chondrites. Next slide, please. And so my doctoral research has focused on planetary differentiation. So the objects, so we have evolved or differentiated meteorites. They're called achondrites, that's the jargon, and they form in planetary bodies. So things from Mars. We don't have anything definitively from Mercury or Vesta, but we have things of Mercury or Venus. But we do have samples from Mars, we have samples from the moon, not only samples, but meteorites from the moon, meteorites from Mars, and we have meteorites from asteroid 4 Vesta. And all of these bodies are fully differentiated. And by that, I mean they have a core, a mantle, and a crust, just like the Earth. So, but then there's also other bodies that are not fully differentiated. They started to form a core, which means the metal started separating out. And then something happened. Maybe the body got cold, it got smashed to smithereens, we don't know. So the meteorite on the top left is something that's started to form, but you see a lot of metal in there, which is the shiny stuff. And so it's not making a rock, because if you look on Earth, we don't get a lot of metal on the surface of the Earth. Most of it comes from the core, and we can't get to it. So you're lucky when you get a big metal deposit. And then the meteorite on the bottom is actually a basalt from Vesta. So it's basically just a rock that's kind of like something you would find on Hawaii or the Canary Islands, but on Vesta. And of course, it looks a little bit different, but volcanic rocks come in many flavors. And so this is very comparable to what we find on the surface of the Earth. And these are the rocks I focused on in my doctoral work. So in this postdoctoral fellowship that I have received from AAUW, I proposed looking at the signatures in these rocks, the evolved or differentiated meteorites, because the complex picture that we're beginning to see is that some of these rocks are actually more ancient than what is called, quote, the primitive meteorites. And so I'm investigating these. It really hasn't been done before, and not everyone thinks it's a great idea. So I think it's gonna work though. So I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to do so. And finally, what am I gonna actually look at? Next slide, please. So these are black scatter images of eucrites. These are these differentiated meteorites that I'm looking at. And so in this one on the left, you see an iron nickel metal grain, and it doesn't have a lot of nickel, which is a good thing, and I'll explain in the next slide why. And the one on the right has a silicate. It's called a pyroxene, which kind of looks like a fish turned funny ways. And then next to it is another metal. And so I am looking into these meteorites using electron microscopy, and then eventually more sophisticated analyses of isotopes. So I'm characterizing the meteorites, and I'm going to measure them to see if we can see signatures of supernova in these differentiated meteorites, the ones that come from planetary bodies. Next slide, please. And what is that signature? I don't want to go into too many details because it would take up a lot more time. And so, but to first order what we're looking for. So I said at the very beginning that elements heavier, iron and heavier, form in supernova. And so iron 60 is an isotope. So it has, when you look at the periodic table, iron is like 56. But iron 60 has a little bit more mass than that. But it was formed in early supernova, specifically supernova type 2, and it decayed to nickel 60, and there's no more iron 60 available because there's no more supernova locally. Well, we don't want supernova locally because we wouldn't be here. And so we're looking for the nickel 60 signature. How much nickel 60 can we measure? And can we see some special, it's called an excess, that says that supernova added iron 60, which then became nickel 60 into these meteorites. And so that is what I'm looking at in the detail. And yeah, I'm really excited for this project. And thank you again for your support, and I'm happy to answer questions. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. How interesting. The world around us, huh? You know, what is so fascinating about all of the fellows and grant recipients that we have is the different fields that they're in. And I admire AUW so much for that. You know, they don't concentrate on just one thing, but just the wide world that we live in, and how all of these fellows and grant recipients can help it become a better world. So we really appreciate that. So I am now going to turn the program over to Lynn Batchelor, who's our AUW Fund Chair, and she's going to introduce to you the next group of fellows and grant recipients. Lynn.
Thank you, Diane. Good morning, everyone. So on behalf of AAUW California Fund Committee, I want to add my appreciation to all of you for your presence today. It's my privilege to introduce the next 4 exceptional women. The first one is Allison Espinoza Cechko. She's received a career development grant. She has a master's in social work at Smith College. She's sponsored by a number of California branches, including Thousand Oaks, Santa Barbara, Claremont, Covina, Goleta Valley, Camarillo, Berkeley, Long Beach, Danville, Alamo, Tehachapi Mountain, plus 12 individual donors. So we're very pleased to be with Allison today. So Allison, please speak to us.
All right, can you all hear me okay? I'm going to assume yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So hi everyone, my name is Allison Espinoza Cechko. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really grateful to be here with all of you today. I'm feeling so inspired by everyone's presentation so far and the work that everyone's doing in the world. So today I hope to share a bit about myself and the work that I'm doing in the world and sort of what I've been engaged in the past. I will particularly highlight the US criminal justice system and the ways in which it's impacted me personally, those who are most marginalized in this country, and hope to share a bit about the ways I hope to change that. So I was born and raised in the Bay Area in California, and I'm currently located in Oakland, California on Ohlone land. And I come from a really large mixed race Mexican-American family, which means a whole lot to me. And my family instilled in me values of compassion, respect for all people, and the importance of committing our lives to social justice. And my maternal grandfather actually worked with Cesar Chavez and was really involved in civil and labor rights struggles throughout his life. And that definitely had a really big impact on my mother, which then had a really big impact on myself and my siblings. As a young person, my family also encountered some challenging times with two of my brothers getting incarcerated. During that time, I was also a victim of CSA, sexual harm, and I had a number of interactions with social workers and parts of the legal system. Both of these experiences really impacted the way that I saw the world, and also are some of the main drivers for why I do the work in the world that I do. And in those experiences, I really saw and felt the ways that the criminal justice system doesn't really do justice for anyone, both folks who are on the side of causing harm and those on the side of experiencing the harm. It particularly impacts, as many of you know, those who are most marginalized, those who are Black, Indigenous, folks of color, people who are poor or working class. So just want to share a few statistics about prisons, which some of you may know or may not. One of my former mentors, Fania Davis, who is the founder of Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth here in Oakland, California, says that prisons harm people to show people that harming people is wrong. I'll repeat that. She says that prisons harm people to show people that harming people is wrong. There are a lot of things that I could say about sort of the backwardness of prisons, but just a few things I can share right now is that the US currently has the highest rates of incarceration around the world, with around 2.3 million people currently behind bars and almost 7 million people under some form of correctional control. That's about 1 in 50 people in this country. And we actually have more than 6,000 confinement facilities, which is more than the number of colleges and universities that we have combined in this country. We would think that with that number of correctional facilities that we would have relatively low recidivism rates. And unfortunately, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, it estimates that prisons in the US have an 83% recidivism rate, with 5 out of 6 state prisoners going back to prison within 9 years of their release. All that's to say is that our prison system isn't doing what it sought out to do, and it's failing our communities in many ways. So sort of equipped with this knowledge and the values that my family instilled in me, and an awareness of ineffectiveness of this system, I naturally sought out ways of addressing harm in our society that actually meet the needs of all parties involved. My hope, and also what I've seen in the work that I've been doing, but is sort of I've been seeking out programs that create wholeness for everyone and tend to and address the root causes of harm in our society versus simply just punishing an individual. All of this brought me to the field of restorative justice, which has been an honor in the last 8 years to be working in. And most significantly, I worked at an organization called the Ahimsa Collective in Oakland, California. Recommend checking them out. And they provide really powerful restorative programs for people affected by harm and crime. So offering programs both inside prisons and for the community. As a part of that organization, I have facilitated victim offender dialogues that actually bring the responsible party and the person who's been harmed together to have a dialogue in hopes for repair in ways that our traditional sort of justice or legal system doesn't provide for folks who have been harmed. I have also run programs inside prisons for men who have been in prison for intimate violence and have done long-term work with them that bridges the connection between healing and accountability, some of my favorite work in the world to do. And most recently in doing that work, really started to realize that I needed more explicit tools or wanted more explicit tools to hone these restorative practices to even more effective models for working with people. I also wanted to gain therapeutic skills to bring to the work I was already doing, and very practically speaking, hope to gain some security for myself and my family. This is what brought me to the Smith College School for Social Work. And I'm so grateful for the AAUW Fund and all of its supporters. It was such a gift to hear all of the people who are supporting me in this work in this field. Yeah, it's been, I honestly can't say, express my gratitude enough for the ways in which it's relieving the financial burden of being in grad school and obtaining this degree. And as a Chicana woman myself, it feels particularly powerful as there are so few Latinx folks or women doing this work. So thank you. I was attracted to social work school because of the socio-political analysis that it brings to the field of social services, and really sits with the acknowledgement of the fact that people's suffering isn't just in their own heads, but is actually a product of harmful systems themselves. And with that, we'll also say that the field of social work still has a long way to go in ending and stopping their complicity in with those same systems of oppression, most notably our criminal justice system. So in closing, just want to share that as an abolitionist or someone who believes that it is truly possible to create a society where our communities can thrive and be protected without prisons and police, I really seek to challenge the field of social work's complicity with the carceral system and uplift restorative responses to harm that create true safety and wholeness for all communities. So thank you so much again. It's a real honor to be here with you all, and wishing all of the other grantees the best of luck. And thank you again. Close with that.
Thank you very much. Thank you not only for sharing your personal story, but for providing statistics on criminal justice for us and for all the work that you're doing on restorative justice. Obviously, AAUW has a very strong commitment to social justice, and we appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you. Our second speaker is Ana Grande. She received a community action grant for P.F. Breezy Foundation. She's in Los Angeles. Her topic is Physical Sciences and Engineering Exploration for 100 Low-Income Central Los Angeles Girls. And she is sponsored by Research Publication Grant and Engineering, Medicine, and Science Fund and Nancy Grace Roman STEM. Thank you, Ana.
Good morning, everyone. It is such an honor to be with all of you today, and to the fellow grantees. You are phenomenal. I am in awe of all of you and all your work. And just what a wonderful space to share with all of you today. I'd love to present to you a little bit about Breezy. If you can go to the next slide. What we're trying to do at Breezy is provide safe spaces for our communities. We service the central Los Angeles neighborhoods of Koreatown, Westlake, Rampart, Pico Union, downtown Los Angeles, Exposition Park, East Hollywood. So over the last fiscal year, we serviced over 9,000 families, including 1,200 youth, most of them young children between the ages of 10 and 18. So we're at their most critical developing moments in life. This is where we're trying to break the cycles of poverty and violence in their homes and in their communities, and allowing us to share these spaces through academic pursuits, but also encouraging curiosity, which is something that is not done all the time. Part of our community is 100% are considered low income. They meet the federal poverty line, and 97% are considered very low or extremely low income. 92% of our families also identify as Hispanic or Latino, and practically 99.9% are renters in the Los Angeles area. This is who we serve. Next slide, please. So as part of our deliverables for this particular grant, this is what we were seeking, really, to establish two cohorts of young women, one in middle school and the other in high school, exploring science-based activities and culminating in projects, experiencing local space museums or science-based activities. Also allowing our high school girls to really explore colleges and careers that would benefit, STEM-related careers. And of course, above all things, have fun in this process. There is no judgment. As girls and as women, we've all been confronted by this systematic heaviness, I want to say, of really just not moving towards the sciences, not exploring math, not exploring anything that has to do with it. And so when I'm hearing our other grantees like explore theater and art and, it's just, and even migration, it really pulls my heart because I could see that our girls can definitely relate to these new experiences. Next slide, please. So part of the things that we did, it was this particular summer, we started off with some STEM activities, a STEM camp. We focused more on earth sciences, but also on robotics and coding. So as I said, we had two cohorts, one in middle school and one in high school. Our middle schoolers were able to not only explore digging up some earth and planting and looking at medicinal herbs, but also looking at robotics and coding. We took them to a one-day oceanic coding camp, which really allowed them to find ways of cleaning up our ocean. So they had to figure this out together as a team, and it really provided them with opportunities not only to look at the social injustices that we have created around our earth and our ocean, but also implement a lot of communication strategies and team building activities. Our high school cohort, what we did with them was we provided summer paid internships. They had to meet about 100 hours. Some of them worked in local community clinics. Some of them worked in our vaccination clinics. And these were all throughout Los Angeles County. We also implemented some music engineering and then our Gen 2 camp. Our Gen 2 camp it's 2 generations, 1 mission, and that's what it stands for. And it would allow high school students to actually teach the silver generation, the silver haired generation of 65 and up, how to use a tablet and how to set it up. And it really taught kids how to be patient with other generations, but also that the exploration of, even a Google search, it can be hard for others. So, it's the patience, but also love of, and really helping them put together the curriculum themselves. We also hosted a young entrepreneurs camp where all the ladies, or those who identified as women, I should say, were taught marketing and business skills. They also designed their own either clothing line, brand, stickers, and then we culminated that with a, I want to say, street festival of sorts, where our partners and community at large were welcomed into our spaces, COVID friendly, by the way, or COVID safe, and they were able to sell their products. So it gave these girls a space, a very safe space to not only identify with their craft, but also become much more assertive in their own spaces. So one particular markup ended up happening with a one of those bags that was designed by one of the girls, and it was such a hot commodity that she ended up having to raise the market price, from $5 to $8, and then lastly to 10. But on average, each of these girls, with their own effort, earned over $300 just on that one street vending, street fair exhibit. We also provided our girls college and career readiness, specifically around financial aid, financial assistance, financial coaching, and financial literacy. We wanted to make sure that girls had all the tools that they needed in order to thrive in college or in their career of choice. We took them to college campuses. We had them meet with several of the departments on site so that they can also learn about what careers are available to them should they choose a field in sciences. And last but not least, we did drones and unicorns. So what we are working on a lot of is our young or recently arrivals, or undocumented students, as they're known here in California. And part of it is to really teach them how to not only provide a safe space, but explore technology in their newfound land. So we used drones so that they could explore their surroundings. They had to put together the drones themselves and code it. And then they were able to fly them throughout their neighborhood and take pictures and showcase them. And it was just such a wonderful experience for them. And lastly, just to make things fun, they also put together unicorns, a unicorn robot that really did what they wanted them to do in a way of either walking or giddy-upping, or even having their lights flash. So they had a lot of fun. Next slide, please. As such, the outcomes of this particular extensive summer camp that we did with these girls, 81% of our middle school girls found STEM fun. 46% of them have now indicated a new interest in math and science classes. 97% of our high school girls completed their career pathways plan. And I want to highlight that 97% and not 100, because life happens. And, these are girls that are in at-risk communities that don't always have the support of their parents or their guardians. So when we see one of them not be able to finish, that doesn't mean they were not paid for their hours served. It just means they were not able to complete their 100 hours for many, many reasons. 100% of our participants finished their internship. 100% of them earned $1,500 each for the 100 hours of experiences. 33% of them indicated an interest in a STEM career, and 12% of our girls enrolled in pre-health major, plus 6% of our girls also enrolled in business and accounting majors. Next slide, please. So I have to say that it has been tremendous fun, not only working with our girls and having a sole focus on them. I know that our staff has been, thrilled with the outcomes, but also would like to further explore deepening the impact with our girls and their families. Thank you.
Thank you so much, not only for sharing the information about your Breezy Foundation and its impact on the community, which is very informative, but for your work with the STEM girls at middle school. That's very near and dear to our hearts, as we do a STEM camp, 9 of them in California, and it focuses on middle school young women. And I also thought it was really interesting, your idea for the high school, the Gen 2, that was a great idea, as well as that entrepreneurship in practice at the street fair. So thank you so much for your work. We appreciate it. Our next recipient is Leah Hookstra. She's a Selected Professions Fellowship. She has an MS in Applied Mathematics, and she's studying at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And we're very grateful to our branches on the East Coast who are sponsoring her. Leah.
Hello. Can folks see me and hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I am genuinely honored to be included in this group of astounding women. It's really incredible to be hearing everybody's work, and I'm just genuinely grateful to be able to be included in such an exceptional group. I wanted to start with a quick acknowledgement. I'm not actually originally from California. I moved to California to study at Cal Poly in the beginning of September. And now I'm here in San Luis Obispo and studying on Chumash land. And I'm very grateful to have this opportunity. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about me. I graduated in 2013 from Calvin University. It's in Michigan, with a BA in mathematics and international development. And those two majors kind of reflect a sort of two guiding lights in my life. That one is my interest in and genuine love for mathematics, and the other is my passion for equality and trying to understand the world we live in at a systemic level and kind of work to see change so that we're able to have a more equitable future. I have spent the last 7 years between college and my graduate studies working in research and reporting focused positions as a data analyst in a variety of settings. I did some research in an academic setting for in the social sciences. I also did research in K-12 education policy for a while. I also did some work in Amman, Jordan at a nonprofit where I was helping lead their tech team for, they focus on assisting urban refugees living in Amman. And alongside that data analytics kind of focus, I also have done quite a bit of volunteering. I really appreciated Anna's, the work that Breezy is doing, since I've also been impacted by those types of programs, but I didn't come to it until I was an adult. But after graduating college, I was able to be helped by this organization called Django Girls, which focuses on helping women enter the STEM field, specifically in tech, and worked with them for a while, and also eventually joined as a volunteer in addition to their support of me and then giving back to them. And so I've worked in a lot of settings trying to work alongside like nonprofit, local community-based organizations, such as the Grand Rapids Pride Center. There's a couple of them listed on there, but bringing my skills as a data analyst and being able to provide any technical support that I can to be able to further the missions of these excellent organizations. And it's been, like I mentioned, I graduated in 2013. It's been about 7 years since I was last in school, but each of these professional experiences and the volunteer experiences as well, they've been incredibly valuable, and they've really shaped the decision that I made to eventually go back to graduate school and to specifically focus on mathematics as the area that I want to study. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I'm currently pursuing my MS in mathematics at Cal Poly State University. It's been an excellent experience so far. I am still new in the program, and I I basically, I have this professional experience as a data analyst, which has been incredibly valuable. And now that's shaped my future goals, I'm trying to get my foundation in mathematics much more solidified, and so I can go on to pursue some more mathematically based research and eventually hopefully lead some of those research projects. So as of now, I'm studying all of the areas of pure math, which I really enjoy. So discrete mathematics, abstract algebra, real analysis, and trying to, since I've been out of school a while, like really firm up my ability in those areas. And Cal Poly has been a great place for that to happen. They have an excellent mathematics program and really supportive professors. It's been a really good experience so far. I'm really excited because I'm going to be taking the applied mathematics specialization with the goal of being able to kind of bring that back into my desire to understand systems of equality, systems of discrimination, and be able to kind of disrupt those where possible. And I'll be graduating, it's a 2-year program, and so I'll be graduating in 2023. That's the plan. So yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so as I mentioned, this MS is sort of a stepping stone to eventual PhD work that I hope to do. Hopefully this summer I will be able to do a research project and start a thesis next year. But my eventual goal is to kind of, after firming up this foundation in mathematics, in addition to kind of continuing to study more areas of math, I would like to bring that back into some applications towards understanding social dynamics and social systems. There's a lot of really interesting research being done in trying to disrupt gerrymandering, or in how to, in the algorithmic space, that we're all inundated with algorithms every day. And there's some really interesting research and really important research in understanding the ways that those algorithms can replicate the biased decision-making of humans and the discriminatory decision-making of humans, and trying to disrupt those systems so that we don't just live in a world where we say the computer told us it's fine, but humans design those computers, and we need to have ways to check against some of those known issues as well as unknown issues. So I'm really hopeful that I'll be able to kind of marry this love of mathematics and a desire for social justice kind of in the same career, and even then continuing to offer what skills I have to support kind of more grassroots led organizations as well. Next slide, please. So, and lastly, I just wanted to say thank you so much, because this grant really made it possible for me to be able to pursue this route. I've been dreaming of going to grad school for years, and I was finally able to do it because of the Selected Professions Fellowship. So I'm incredibly grateful for this opportunity, and for all of you who have helped make this possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you also for sharing your life story with so many wide-ranging experiences, very inspiring. And I love that you made the connection for someone like me who's not into mathematics between the applied mathematics and its connection to everyday life and things that influence us, such as gerrymandering. So we look forward to hearing more of your research. Thank you. The last of our speakers is Sylvia Rodriguez Vega. She's an American Fellow. She's a postdoctorate in Chicanx and Latinx Studies at New York University. And her topic is Caged Childhoods, Art, Healing, and U.S. Immigration Policy. She's sponsored by Los Angeles, Palm Springs, and Arlene Black. Thank you, Sylvia.
Hi, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here. I hope everyone can hear me okay. If we can go to the next slide. The first thing I'll say is that I completed a 2-year postdoc at NYU in the Department of Applied Psychology, and have recently transitioned to the University of Santa Barbara, where I'm a UC Chancellor's postdoc in the Department of Chicana and Chicano Studies. And currently I'm in Los Angeles on the traditional lands of the Tongva and Gabrielino people. So I want to acknowledge their presence in these lands as stewards as well. And one of the things that I wanted to share before starting the presentation is just how wonderful it is to be here. The way that I came to do this work of art and creativity and education and social justice was very influenced by someone who was actually funded by AAUW 14 or maybe 15 years ago now, my mentor, Christina Marin, who got funded to do her dissertation work. And I was a 13-year-old participant in her dissertation and continue this work today. So just the cyclical nature of, this program is something I want to acknowledge. So I'm just going to share a little bit about a part of the book that I'm working on. The book is currently under advanced contract with NYU Press, and it's on art and creativity as mitigation strategies for anti-immigrant policies, and it's called Caged Childhoods. Next slide, please. So over the last number of years, we've seen some of these images. Immigration policies have quickly become very hostile and restrictive. Most recently, in the last 4 years, images like the one on the left, which is from California, have become widespread, and immigration raids have spread across the US, as you see on the right. But this isn't new. There is a history of this happening before, even during the Obama administration. As you see below, children were already sometimes detained in these cell-like conditions. So if we can go to the next slide, I take all of this into context to really understand what does it mean for mixed status, undocumented children in immigrant families who are seeing these things on the news, talking about it with families, just being immersed in this anti-immigrant narrative and rhetoric happening. So the impact of family separation and trauma on children and youth is something that is really important to think about. And just last year, the Migration Policy Institute published this report that you see on immigration enforcement and the mental health of Latino high school students. Next slide, please. Here they say that adolescence is a critical period of time in a young person's life where they're developing a lot of their identity, their awareness of who they are. But when a child or a youth knows someone who could be detained and deported, this starts to weigh heavily in their life and in their academic pursuits. More specifically, this report says that these fears are linked to mental health conditions and hold potential consequences for a young person's school engagement, academic achievement, and future labor market outcomes. So to think about what are the possibilities of intervening in this stress, in this trauma, in this toxic environment where it could lead to a lot of negativity. And so this is where my work really tries to make an intervention. Next slide. So over the last 12 to 13 years, I've done research in various border states where I've conducted studies with children and youth ages 8 to 17 years old. Specifically in Arizona, I created an art camp for a summer. And then in California, I designed a curriculum for a 6th grade theater class. And through the drawings that I've collected, the performances that I've analyzed, the poems, the journaling, all of these stories have been very rich with information about children and youth experiences. More specifically, I found that children and adolescents can externalize the emotions, the worries, the anxieties that they're facing, while reimagining these destructive situations into moments of possibility. And they are also able to question these injustices in society and think critically and creatively about them. And the hope is that all of these skills will help them develop some resilience to be able to navigate stressful and traumatizing experiences. Next slide, please. These are some examples of the artwork that I've collected and analyzed with youth and children. So the first is from Omar, who was 12 years old when he drew this in Arizona. And he says, in Arizona, the sheriff, Jorapayo, arrests any person that looks Mexican, no matter if they are a US citizen or not. He sends them to jail where they get beat up and treated like animals. That leaves kids alone in the USA, away from their parents, to get deported by a family member if lucky. So Omar here is describing this drawing, which to me is so powerful. It looks like a campaign poster. And what is interesting is that this is way before any of the recent anti-immigrant rhetoric from the Trump administration. This is from the Obama era, from 2008 forward. And so you see that Sheriff Jorapayo is depicted as this person who is protesting against Mexicans. And this student, this 12-year-old, creates these images that are highlighting the feelings of not belonging. Although he was born in the US and is a US citizen, he feels that America is not freedom for him, with that cynicism behind the image where he says, freedom is America, yeah, right. Next image. Here, this is from California. This is from 2017. And Eric, who's 12 years old, says, I was so happy that my cousin Alex was coming to the US, but he actually died in the desert. I guess of starvation or thirst, I don't know. We didn't know anything about my cousin until we saw on the news that his body was found on the border. And this is a very true story that happened in my theater class. There were two students who were waiting for their cousin to get to Los Angeles, and he never made it. And Alex was a 16-year-old young person who was coming to work and help his mom. And so Alyssa, who is Eric's cousin, drew this image. It says, Descansa en paz, Alex, rest in peace, Alex. And you see that this image is representative of the border. There are cacti, there's a moon and the sun and a tiny cross with the name of Alex. But in the center, the most important part of this image is a television set. And it says Primer Impacto, which is the name of the news show where they found out that Alex's body had been found. And this was deeply traumatic for the students. Everyone in the class started sharing stories about death, started sharing stories about migration and loss and family separation, the pain that that brings up that is often difficult to discuss at home. And so this was a moment where students could process these emotions, share in community with each other about what these circumstances mean to them. And so when it came time to create our very final performance of the year, students remembered Alex's story. And in the next image, you will see what came out of that. So here they created this play, and this is a storyboard of the story that was projected above the stage so that everyone who may not speak English or doesn't understand Spanish could follow along. They named it Los Niños Inmigrantes, the immigrant children. And here you see the three little kids that are wanting to cross the border. They try to go through the airport, but they aren't allowed. So then they have to migrate through the border. But you see that there's difficult and dangerous circumstances like not having water, the temperature. So then they find a magical half human, half coyote creature who is savvy of the desert and understands how to cross. And on the other side, you see on the third, I know you can't see my cursor, but there's mom and dad who are also on the other side of the border, helping them cross, demonstrating agency. And so Trump goes to check on the border, as you see at the bottom corner. And what happens is that it's so dusty that he sneezes and his wig falls off and he runs away, and children thought that that was so hilarious, and they're able to cross and be back with their family. And so in this imaginative moment, Alex is able to survive and get to the other side, and the family is able to be together. And so although this isn't a true story, it is a moment to reimagine the actual devastating news and experience that they had. I think I have one more. If you could go to the next one, please. So in general, these images and these opportunities to journal, to draw, to create theater, to creatively express what they're going through allows them to question injustice. You see here that 16-year-old high school student, Anna, feels that her family's trapped in their home inside of a cage. And although they're not detained, they're not able to leave their home because there is danger outside of their home. And you see this very depressing drawing of the sun frowning, a gray sky, the flowers suppressed, there aren't leaves on the trees, and they write immigration's making everything fall apart. And so last image that I'll share, actually, this was not the last one, is how they develop resilience. This is Diego, who is 13 years old from El Salvador. And he said, I put Donald Trump and I put the peace sign and I put people agreeing with each other. So I want Donald Trump to make peace and to not report immigrants no more and stop being racist. So you see this image here. It's a portrait of himself and his dreams. And his dreams are to become a soccer player, an amazing athlete who plays basketball and football. But in the stadium, he also centers the image of Donald Trump on the top left corner, which is a very important place in an image because Western societies read from top left to right. And so juxtaposed with Trump's face is this peace sign, people holding hands. And so he feels a personal sense of responsibility to create peace, to have more unity, which is a big task for a 13-year-old. So I think all I want to end with, next slide, please, is that work with youth is very important, and YPAR methods or youth participatory action research can be very valuable for that. And so my work creates these community-based programs and partnerships through this curriculum development that I worked on. And I'm just thankful for this opportunity and to continue doing this work. And I hope that I'm able to share my book once it is published. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leah, not only for making the personal connection to the generational AAUW connection, which we appreciate, but thank you for your vision for intervention to make a positive change in the lives of these young people. Thank you for providing the classes for art and theater and journaling. And thank you for sharing those powerful images with us. We all look forward to reading your book and hope that that happens very soon. Thank you for being here. So, in addition to direct donations for which we are eternally grateful, we also have a couple of other ways in which you can support the AAUW Fund. And to begin that, we want to turn the microphone over to our AAUW California meetings planner, Charmin Goering. She's going to talk about Legacy Circle.
Good morning, everyone. I love how everyone is doing land acknowledgements, and so I'd like to do one as well. I'm speaking to you from Sacramento, California, the tribal land of the Nisenan people. But also original stewards of the Sacramento Valley included the Southern Maidu people in the north, the Valley and Plains Miwok and Miwok people to the south, and the Patwin Wintun people to the west. Today I'm talking about the Legacy Circle, and I had my pin on, but if the glass fell off, so this is what the pin looks like. You saw Diane has one as well. And the Legacy Circle is really a way for AUW to recognize and honor members who have included AUW National in their estate. There are so many ways you can do this. It sounds like it'd be complicated, but it actually takes just a couple of minutes of your time. There's lots of different options. You can leave a specific amount or a percentage. You can change the beneficiary and life insurance policy or an IRA, which is what I have done. There's gifting stocks or securities. You can do a charitable gift annuity, which will actually pay you during the rest of your lifetime, as well as giving a gift to AUW. You don't have to be wealthy. This is, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions. I'm a public school teacher who's a single mom. I definitely am not wealthy, but you can always leave something. And a lot of people on this call, I have saw the participant list. You've been members of AEW for a long, long time. We're all here because we think this organization is wonderful and we want it to survive well into the future. And leaving a gift for AEW in your estate is a way to do that. It doesn't take, you don't have to even disclose an amount right now. It doesn't usually cost you anything at this point in time. It's when you pass away that the gift would be going to AEW. So it's a great way to make your core values known now. By supporting this long-term success of this organization that we love. And you can, if you have questions, you can talk to me. I'm in the Northern California Legacy Circle Liaison, and we have Judy Horan, who I think is also on the call, who is our Southern Liaison. You can also reach out to National and talk to Heather Miller and any of her staff. Again, we had a contest this last year in California, and I think that my branch actually won. And we have to figure out the reward part of that. But it's just a really easy way to support AEW, support all of these wonderful scholars, support these scholars always make me want to go back to college. I feel like I need to go back to college and take some classes. But it's just a really wonderful way to acknowledge the work and the mission of AEW and ensure that the organization is around for another 140 years. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Charmin. So as part of our working toward our 5 stars, we need to increase participation in the Legacy Circle by 10% statewide. So we're counting on all of you to help us become shining stars. And our second opportunity is going to be introduced to you by our former state president and national president, Sharon Schuster. Sharon.
Okay, well, let's start this again. Thank you, Lynn. Sorry about that. You've heard from let's start. Let's see. Am I on?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's start again. Thank you very much, Lynn, for the introduction and for the opportunity to come to you. You've heard about a variety of ways that you can contribute to AUW, depending on how you choose to and what your needs are. You can choose to support the fine work of these wonderful fellows that we've been hearing from today and grant awardees. It's just mind-boggling what their work is. You can make a legacy gift that Charmin told you about that will aid AUW far into the future. And you're probably aware of the Greatest Needs Fund that's used today to support our current program. But I want to let you know about another alternative, the Menine Lecce Giving Circle. It was 20 years ago. I can hardly believe that it was 20 years ago. Some of us came together as a giving circle to support projects within AUW. And we agreed to donate current funds and to choose a program or a project to fund. For instance, we've funded research such as barriers and bias, deeper in debt, crossing the line, We've funded community action projects, such as you've heard from today. But we've also funded more in California because most of our members live in California. And sometimes there are needs beyond what the endowed funds would have permitted. We're currently considering funding additional work on the Latina initiative, or maybe more grants, or maybe increasing the level of get out the vote involvement. Now, anyone can give to the Giving Circle. Just note fund number 4229 with your donation. But if you want to be part of the decision-making process, we ask for a commitment. First, this commitment means that you will give annually at a significant level. Now, what do I mean by a significant level? Well, we start at the chocolate club level. Remember Chocolate Club at $300? And if you haven't been giving at that level, we ask for $500 the first year, going up to $1,000 in 2 years. And we also ask that you consider increasing your gift by 10% a year, and that's to overcome the impact of inflation. So with your significant gift, you will join us in saluting Maneen Lecce, our role model in giving, and in making a difference in AUW. And to find out more, for more information, contact me at sharon@schuster.org or 818-888-1376. It's that simple. There's the information about how to contact me. Thank you very much, Lynn and California.
Thank you, Sharon. Wow, what a wonderful event today. I'm sure you are as impressed as I am with those extraordinary women and the work that they're doing. And of course, today's success was the culmination of work by many people. It's my privilege to chair the AAUW California Fund Committee. The members of that committee are Judy Horan, Liz Bathgate, Charmin Goering, Raleigh Windorf, Sharon Westifer, Pamela Meyer, our new scheduler, Harriet Tower, the current state name gift honoree, and Jan Cook. And as an ex officio member, Diane Owens. But because Diane has been a former fund director, her work, not only her networking, but her knowledge was absolutely invaluable to the success of the committee this year, and we thank her very much. Instead of gratitude to our behind the scenes experts, so the bold, the brave, and the brilliant Diane Owens, and that is her theme in case you're new to that terminology. Sandy Gabe, our Zoom guru for the events and the practice sessions. Today's Zoom host, Randa Blanding. Linda Slater, who did the internet postings. Nancy Turner, who provided the publicity. Other members of the communications committee who stepped in when needed. Sandy Gabe and Gail Swain, and I believe Nancy Turner are all monitoring the chat and the Q&A today. And a huge debt of gratitude to Tremaine Parquet. He's the AAUW Deputy Director of Advancement, and he was instrumental in providing all kinds of timely information whenever it was requested. And Pamela Myers, our new scheduler, she contacted all 38 recipients numerous times. She scheduled their appearance at our fund events and the practices, obtained all their information in order to schedule them for branch and IBC visits, and actually has already scheduled several of them. Of course, our gratitude to all of the grant recipients and the fellows who took time from their busy schedules to be with us today. We really, really appreciate not only giving of your time, but also the opportunity to learn a little bit about what you are doing. A big thank you to our presenters today, Heather Miller, AAUW Director of Advancement, Plan Giving, Charmin Gehring, Legacy Circle, Sharon Schuster, Mooning Lecce Giving Circle, and Diane Owens. We're so grateful to our sponsors and all of you who are with us today. I have 5 quick reminders before we close today's event. Number 1, the fund deadline is the end of December, so you still have time for that final push for contributions. I chose the lofty goal of $555,000 to tie in with the National 5-Star Campaign, which I hope all of our branches are using. So hopefully will help us reach that goal. Number 2, the deadline for branch named gift honoree is March the 1st. You may submit 1 name for each $750 that your branch contributes to the AAUW. And it's a wonderful privilege for someone to receive that in your branch. Number 3, the deadline for state name gift honoree application is February 15th. Every branch may submit a name to honor a member who has done outstanding work to promote the programs and goals of the AAUW and/or AAUW California. Or you may still register for our last event, which is next Sunday, November the 7th. So you'll see another group of outstanding fellows and grant recipients. And finally, photos and brief biographies of all of our fellows and grant recipients and all of the AAUW fund forms you need, including how to request a fellow or grant recipient, are located on the AAUW California website. Go to the Fund tab and you will find it there. If you had questions in the Q&A which were not answered, we will try and contact you with the answer so that you can have all the information that you need. Thank you again for coming and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Oh, great. She's showing you exactly how to get to all the information. Thank you, everyone.